Imagine bearing the weight of a deadly supernatural curse, all because of a horrific mistake made by your own parents. For 8-year-old Su Xiao, this terrifying nightmare became her absolute reality. It all began on the day her old family home was scheduled to be demolished. As heavy machinery tore into the cracked earth of their ancestral courtyard, workers suddenly uncovered a massive, writhing pit. Beneath the soil hid endless, tightly packed nests of highly venomous snakes. Terrified and provoked, the swarm began lashing out, attacking the panicked villagers. In a reckless fit of rage, Xiao's father ignored everyone's desperate warnings. He grabbed a heavy metal canister, poured gasoline directly over the pit, and burned the helpless creatures alive. The sickening stench of scorched flesh quickly blanketed half the village, and in that very moment, a dark, vengeful curse was born. Retribution came with terrifying speed. That exact night, Xiao's father was found dead inside the bathroom, brutally bitten to death by unseen attackers. But the horror didn't stop there. When her grieving mother tried to move his bloodied body, a massive, unnaturally colorful serpent slithered directly out of his open mouth. The pure shock of the sight instantly drove her mother into madness, leading to a fatal car crash just days later. Left entirely alone, young Xiao began experiencing horrifying symptoms. Every night, an invisible force would heavily weigh down on her, completely cutting off her breath. She locked her doors and desperately hid inside her wardrobe, but no one could hear her muffled screams. When her grandparents finally discovered her the next morning, she was covered in mysterious, deep bruises. Soon, a volatile, raging fever took over her body, and terrifying, jagged snake scales began erupting through her wrists and ankles. Desperate to save her life, her grandfather sought out a mystical relic, a heavy, red bronze bell, and tied it securely around her ankle. Miraculously, the supernatural fever broke, the suffocating pressure lifted, and the scales faded back beneath her skin. But the spirits were not satisfied. As the snakes continued to systematically hunt down and kill other members of the Su lineage, the terrified, angry villagers turned their wrath entirely on Xiao. An aggressive mob cornered the little girl, demanding she be buried alive to finally pay for her father's sins. Standing completely alone against the furious crowd, her brave grandfather shielded her with his own body, swearing he would die before letting anyone touch a single hair on her head. Protected by her grandfather's ultimate sacrifice, Xiao managed to grow up in constant fear, eventually reaching adulthood. But on the eve of her 19th birthday, the ancient protection completely shattered. The skin on her hand suddenly burned pitch black, and the heavy snake scales aggressively broke through her flesh once more. And that very night, as the air grew freezing cold, she felt an invisible serpent slithering directly into her bed. I could feel it, the ancient snake debt my family owed, coming to collect. It slid right under my sheets, cold and heavy, slithering up my chest until I could barely breathe. When my grandmother burst into the room and saw the dark reptilian scales erupting across my skin, she knew we couldn't hide it anymore. She wept, telling me our only hope was the Nat Kadal, the spirit medium in the next village. As we fled down the dirt road under a blood-red sky, the weight of our past hung heavy over us. This was our retribution. Years ago, my family burned a sacred snake nest, violating the spirits of the land, and now the entire village shunned us. No one else dared to help. The old medium was our absolute last sliver of hope. But when we arrived, she took one look at us and spat, "Get out! The family sins are sky high. I won't meddle in a blood debt with the spirit world." My grandmother dropped to her knees, slamming her head against the stone ground until she bled, begging her to save the last grandchild she had left. Reluctantly, the medium relented. She brought out a jar of divination sticks and told me to draw, to see what fate the spirits had written for me. I pulled 3 sticks. When they hit the table, the medium gasped in pure horror. All 3 read death. She stepped back shaking and told me the snake debt had already consumed me, that I was a dead woman walking. But I refused to accept that fate. I reached back into the jar and drew a 4th stick. As I held it up, it gleamed with a supreme luck fortune. The medium's eyes nearly left her head. She stumbled backwards, screaming in absolute panic, looking into the shadows as if the room had filled with ancient forces. "This is impossible," she shrieked. "This isn't a human fortune. The great Cobra King, the Lord of the Spirits, is already here,